Good morning. I'm Jingran Zhao. I'm assistant professor in accounting at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So as I walk on the stage or in front of the camera, you are probably subconsciously analyzing my emotional state, right? Am I smiling? Am I nervous? Am I confident? And in fact, we do this in our everyday lives, right? Between our friends, between our spouses, partners, or colleagues, or even students. But in this study, I'm going to look at the CEO facial expressions in terms of business setting. Like, does that contain information about the company's future outcomes? Can we predict future stock returns based on the CEO facial expressions? Now, before I go into the interesting findings, I want to give you some background on this research topic. So I'm trained in accounting research. In accounting research, there's a big area called disclosure. And what I mean by disclosure, it's how management or insiders of the company convey information to the outsiders, right? These outsiders include investors, analysts, lenders, and customer and suppliers. And prior literature has looked at many ways managers will disclose this information to the outsiders, such as financial statements, right? So 60 years ago, accounting scholars have a look at how stock markets react to earnings numbers. And then research has moved down to conference calls, shareholder letters, and press releases. So scholars have used that textual analysis programs to look at how the words in conference calls, press releases, convey information about the firm's fundamentals. Some studies also look at the voice the CEO uses during conference calls and how that conveys information to the market. Now, in this study, I'm going to look at CEO interviews on aired TVs, right? So such as Bloomberg and CNBC. When interviews happens, how does that convey information to the public? And the reason I use CEO interviews because I can analyze these videos. I can analyze the CEO facial expressions in these videos to examine the managerial affective states. And do those emotional states reflect information about the company? And how does that predict companies' future returns? And the reason I want to study this is because we can quantify our emotions using facial expressions. Psychology studies have found out that we have more than 100 muscles on our faces. And depending on how each muscle moves, it can tell us what your emotional states are. So such as how I move my eyebrows, how I move the muscles around my mouth or nose, how that is reflecting my emotional states. Am I happy? Am I sad? So psychologists have come up with a theory to quantify these facial expressions. Now, they also find that these facial expressions are universal. So no matter what races you are, the color of your skin, the cultural background, even the age, our face moves in such a way that will reflect the universal facial expressions, such as happy, sad, angry, disgusted. So I picked out two popular shows on TV, and you can see these facial expressions no matter what kind of movie you watch, right? Western movies, Chinese movies, Korean dramas. You could tell what kind of emotions they show, right, through their facial expressions. So these can be analyzed or applied to different races. And studies also show that we, as an audience, react to other people's facial expressions. So depending how I show my face, right, my students, for example, or you as an audience will react to my facial expressions because you could tell what my emotions are. And studies have shown that people will have different heart rates, different palmar skin conductance responses when you have a different facial expression. Okay, now I'm going to show you a video clip from one of my favorite shows called Lie to Me. This is a good example to illustrate how a criminologist can use facial expressions to conduct cases. And this movie or drama is actually based on a real story by Paul Ekman, who is a psychologist that comes up with this theory for universal human facial expressions.
Now we just saw there was a brief expression of happiness on his face, which he was trying his best to conceal, lasted for less than a fifth a second, and what we call a mouth expression. Now over his mouth, the suspect is secretly happy about the location we're searching, which tells me we have the wrong location. Now I tell him about our new plan, and plastic one-sided translation of absolutely no confidence in what I just said. The body contradicts the word. He's lying. Yeah. When you see the suspect in the act of surprise, is there a way to tell if it's real or if you just try to look at it? Now, an act real surprise lasts for less than seconds from first place. If your suspect is surprised for more than a second, he's faking it. He's lying. Now, I call out this target is actually Lawton, and watch it again. Feel scorn. I want that to check. You see this microexpression in your spouse's face. Your marriage is coming to an end. Try it. Yeah. Don't these microexpressions vary depending on the person? Let's leave this up, and we'll go to the Cato Taylor footage. Toyota trial.
Yeah, we've got a lot of microexpressions on current affairs here.
Scorn. Scorn. Huge scorn. Shame. Shame and shame. Contempt. These expressions are universal. Emotion looks the same whether you're a suburban housewife or a suicide bomber. The truth is written on all our faces.
All right, so this is a drama, but in real life, Paul Ekman did consult with FBI in the US, and he uses microfacial expression to analyze whether people are lying or not. So in this study, I'm not going to analyze whether CEOs lie or not, at least not yet. Maybe in the future projects I will. But what I'm doing is I collected CEO interviews from CNBC and Bloomberg, such as this one, and I use a software to analyze the facial expressions in these CEO interviews. So I just show you briefly what these interviews are.
Flash will be replacing hard disk drive. But John, it's not only about client notebook PCs, it's also about data center. We are barely seeing the tip of the iceberg in some artificial intelligence impacting our lives. And as artificial intelligence goes into all verticals and processes lot of data, it actually is going to drive lot of growth for solid-state drive.
Right, as you can see, he appears confident and a little happy, right? So that's our subjective observation. What I will do is I will use a software called Face Reader to analyze the actual facial expressions. And I'll show you a demo of this software I use called Face Reader. I want you to pay attention to the lower right hand. You may not see it very clearly, but they are labeled as neutral, happy, sad, angry, surprised, scared, disgusted, and contempt. And these are the 7 universal human expressions that psychologists have found out. So as the video clip go on, you could see that there is a score as the time goes by. All right, so this is the software I use, and I apply them to CEOs' facial expressions. This is what the output will look like from this face reader. So after I feed each of the video into the software, for every third of a second, it will generate a score for each of the 7 facial expressions. And at the end of the video, I have log for all these facial expressions, and I do different type of analysis on these output. Okay, so I collected about 2,329 videos or interviews from 2011 to I think May this year, and this is a descriptive results I have based on my analysis. So most of the CEOs show they're neutral in the interview, right? Which is kind of predicted. They're probably trained beforehand to not to show negative emotions, right? At least to appear neutral. However, I do capture some sadness, some angry, some surprised, scared, and disgusted moments when the CEOs are being interviewed. Okay, and I'll show you one of my main results. Based on the happiness of the video, the market reacts extremely positively to these interviews. You can see that the yellow line plots the very positive or very happy videos, and the market reacts very positively to these facial expressions around the air date. Okay, what to do next? So I have several projects in the pipeline I want to examine. First one is I want to use facial expression to measure a CEO personality traits, okay? So in psychology studies, people show that when you have very good emotional intelligence, you will show different facial expressions that you expect your audience to have, right? So for example, if I want you to be happy, or you want to see me to be happy, I will mimic a very happy face during our conversation or our interaction. So that could capture a personality trait, and then I can examine how that affects a CEO's career outcome and so on and so forth. A next project I'm also interested in to analyze Fed chairman's facial expression, right? Would that predict future interest rates changes or not? So these are some interesting projects I have. I look forward to your comments and questions. Thank you.